Irish rugby is entitled to deep pride in what it has achieved over the past decade. This was not an era built on illusion or hollow progress, but one defined by genuine advancement, historic milestones, and sustained excellence that reshaped Ireland's standing within the global game. Grand Slams in 2018 and 2023, multiple Six Nations titles, a landmark series win in New Zealand in 2022, prolonged spells as the world's #1 ranked side, and an unprecedented level of organizational alignment all point to the most successful period in Irish rugby history. This was Ireland's strongest generation, and yet, it is precisely because of those achievements that a lingering sense of incompleteness remains. When a team reaches this level of sophistication, stability, and expectation, success is no longer measured by accumulation alone, but by transformation, by moments that redefine what is possible when pressure strips the game back to its essentials. That defining moment never arrived. Instead, Ireland reached a peak that should have been a bridge to something greater, but became an endpoint that, when excellence became the ceiling, modern Irish rugby rose on intelligence, alignment, and control. Central contracts, provincial continuity, and tactical cohesion combined to produce a side that rarely beat itself and regularly imposed its game on others. Ireland became masters of rhythm and accuracy, suffocating opponents through discipline, cohesion, and relentless repeatability, especially within the familiar rhythms of Six Nations campaigns and annual test windows where preparation and structure are most reliably rewarded. The system worked. But in doing so, it became its own constraint. Control and clarity delivered dominance under known conditions. Yet when those conditions disappeared, Ireland were left searching for solutions their framework had never demanded. At World Cups, where refereeing interpretations shift, collisions sharpen, and matches fracture under emotional and physical strain, Ireland repeatedly found themselves operating at the outer edge of their own model. That is where belief faltered and preparation unraveled. What emerged was not a lack of courage, but tactical rigidity. When games moved beyond rehearsal and into confrontation, Ireland's margins vanished. Quarterfinal exits ceased to feel accidental and instead became structural, not because Ireland lacked quality or commitment, but because their game offered too little space for improvisation once control was contested and emotional certainty was challenged. Leinster, as the reflection, Leinster's recent European record mirrors this tension, and the comparison is revealing. For years, Leinster have been Europe's most dominant side across league seasons and pool stages, controlling possession, territory, and tempo with metronomic precision while building depth and continuity that became the envy of the professional game. Yet finals and semifinals have consistently exposed a familiar ceiling. Leinster have often arrived as favorites and departed as runners-up, their defeats narrow rather than destructive, but instructive nonetheless. Statistically, they frequently controlled matches without ever fully owning them emotionally. When rhythm gave way to confrontation, when structure fractured and momentum became volatile, Leinster's authority softened rather than sharpened. Their repeated near misses were not born of a lack of talent, but of an inability to convert seasonal dominance into decisive authority on the biggest days. European Cups are rarely won by the most efficient team over time. They're claimed by the side capable of imposing itself when plans collapse. For all their brilliance, Leinster have not consistently crossed that final threshold. The eighth generation turning over this reckoning has been sharpened by transition. The emotional and tactical spine of this era, figures such as Johnny Sexton, Peter O'Mahony, and Conor Murray, defined Ireland's authority as much through presence as performance. Their departure has created a vacuum that organization alone cannot fill. Test-level leadership does not emerge from systems or spreadsheets. It is forged under pressure and sustained by shared experience. And Ireland are still searching for where their next center of gravity lies. Ryan Baird's rise offers an encouraging glimpse of what Irish rugby continues to do well. Athletic, confrontational, and increasingly assertive, he looks like a forward capable of thriving when structure dissolves, not merely when it holds. His emergence suggests Ireland's physical evolution has not stalled entirely. The situation at fly half, however, reveals a more uncomfortable truth. Sam Prendergast's extended exposure at test level, despite never fully commanding the role, reflects pathway, comfort more than international authority. It speaks to a system that too often mistakes continuity for inevitability in the most decisive position on the field. Test fly halves are forged in uncertainty and pressure, not protected from it, and Ireland's reluctance to fully embrace that reality remains telling. The moment authority collapsed, if one image pierced a decade of narrative, it came at scrum time against South Africa. A front row long regarded as definitive, its reputation built on timing, bind accuracy, square hips, and control of the hit, was dismantled in full view of the rugby world by a pack that offered no negotiation and no release. This was not a marginal defeat or a refereeing footnote. It was the collapse of authority itself. Players accustomed to dictating the terms of engagement were reduced to reaction and retreat. That sequence endures because it carried finality. Ireland's set piece, the area they believed most resistant to pressure, crumbled under aligned power, relentless leg drive, and collective intent. The Springboks did not seek leverage within the contest. They imposed themselves entirely. One of Ireland's perceived strengths was reduced to rubble on the Aviva turf, and reputations built over years were stripped of their currency. Once a front row is exposed in that manner on the biggest stage, it does not fade into memory. It follows you, as others humbled by South Africa before them can attest. The golden generation, properly judged at golden generation, does not require a World Cup to validate its legacy. Ireland's achievements across this era permanently raised standards, strengthened pathways, and embedded professionalism that will endure long after the results fade. But a golden generation does invite a higher level of judgment. This group were not merely seeking consistency. They were attempting to redefine Ireland's ceiling. In that context, repeated quarterfinal exits and near misses cannot be dismissed, not because they erase what was achieved, but because they ultimately define its limit. Ireland became exceptional at being excellent, but never crossed the line into inevitability. The danger now is not decline. The structures remain strong and the talent base deep, but comfort. The belief that refinement alone will eventually deliver what confrontation has not is a seductive one. The next phase demands a willingness to live in discomfort, to value adaptability as highly as cohesion, and to prepare players not just to execute patterns, but to abandon them decisively when the moment requires. Leinster faced the same reckoning. Fewer rehearsed answers, more authority when control is contested, until Irish rugby learns how to impose itself when admiration no longer matters. This era will be remembered not for how high it climbed, but for where it stopped.